So the Orthodox, I'm Egyptian, and I was born into a Coptic family, raised Coptic. And church was a big part of our lives and kind of a normal, you know, a normal part of our lives as a family. And as I was growing up, I had my own inquiries, I guess, and trying to discover my own personal path with God. And I found the community that I now belong to, and felt right at home with them. And because they're Eastern Orthodox and a part of the OCA, I decided to convert and become OCA Orthodox, especially after I did some research and found that, you know, the differences between us don't really warrant not being in communion, at least not how they started. And so for me, it was, not a big change.
Hmm. Hmm. And where did you grow up?
So I was born in Egypt, and then at 7 years old, we moved to Los Angeles, immigrated to Los Angeles, and that's where I grew up.
And did you, after high school, did you go to college before going to the monastery? Or?
Yeah, I went to college also in California, in Riverside, about 2 hours away from Los Angeles.
Mm.
I lived there for a bit for my college years, and in my last semester, I actually had a type of internship out in DC, and which turned into a job. And so I lived for 5 years in Virginia,
Mm.
slash DC, like the outskirts of,
Mm.
and then joined the monastery after that.
Mm. Um, what did you study?
I was a women's studies major.
So what does that consist of?
It's um it's the study of the socio-political, economical, it's borderline sociology, but pertaining to womanhood and everything that women face today globally and in the US. And there was a lot of feminist thought into it, and a very liberal major and a very liberal school, as it was in California. Um, but it definitely just taught me a lot about, it taught me a lot about how the world thinks and what kind of problems there are and what kind of problems we have yet to find solutions for. And just, it was kind of a path of self discovery more than anything. And I felt like it was really guided.
Hmm. Um, did you, were there aspects of it that you found difficult coming from a more traditional background?
Yeah, all of it. All of it I found very difficult. And I didn't, at that time, I was still trying to figure things out and trying to discover, answers to my own questions. And it was kind of a path to articulate everything, but um, none of the methods stuck, especially as I grew in my relationship with Christ. I found there to be much more holistic, much more deeper, much more uh, genuine um, answers to the kind of questions that we face in society. And so none of the thought that I learned stuck with me. But at least I learned it and knew what it was.
Hmm.
And I knew that that's not, it made me learn what I did not agree with, even if I still didn't know exactly what it was. Yeah.
And is it easy to articulate some of those things, some of the worldview, the presuppositions, and so on that you found particularly um, problematic?
Yeah. So I learned that in actuality, it's human existence is filled with injustice, because we're not free, right? Like, we're not free no matter how much we conceptualize freedom and seek after it, and put in order laws and regulations and social programs and whatever to try to reach that freedom, it'll never actually lead us to freedom, because freedom is this, in that sense, what we're doing is we're defining and kind of, it's like a man-built concept of freedom, which can never be really free, because freedom is a divine character, and so it has to be sought out through divine, like through God. And so it was, it took me that whole path to get to that point of understanding that there are these like two levels of existence. There is the existence on this human wisdom level, but no matter how far you try to push that level, it always kind of restarts itself somehow. And so in the end, I felt like the jewel that I came out with was, the difference between asking the wrong questions and the right questions. Because if you're asking that question, a specific question to begin with, it ultimately will lead you down a particular path. And so I don't know how concrete that is, but that's as best as I could articulate it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Can you think of presuppositions that women's studies is built on that you found to be untrue?
Yeah. A presupposition would be that equality means similarity or mirroring, or some kind of just allowing there to be a counterpart for each part of the male existence, where they're, so if males do this, then women must do this. If males are treated this way, women must be treated this way. And to a small extent, I could understand that just on a very elementary level. But I thought that was very backwards, because it doesn't really, allow the full blossom of what one entity uniquely is, but rather keeps it encapsulated in this mirroring phase. Like, what we have to do is continually mirror the counterpart, and so that by nature always will keep the one entity behind, because it's always just trying to catch up to something else, always trying to mirror something else. So
how do in your education, how did the professors and so on, what was their perception of motherhood and the distinctly feminine aspects of human experience, which seems like should be what is most promoted by feminists,
right.
Rather than, it feels like there's a defeminization that feminism is actually bringing about.
Yeah. At the time, I couldn't perceive anything about them, but now, although I found them to be, some of them at least, to be brilliant scholars and brilliant minds, I couldn't, looking back, I didn't find any one of them to be particularly exuding that kind of inspiration or that kind of womanhood or motherhood. And now I know that it's all in the example. It's all about, not just in the example, but like a living presence, and so it goes back to show that kind of gap between concept and conceptualizing and, putting into theory all of the things that you find problematic in order to find some kind of solution and to find a path that actually uh, is able to bring about the results that you're looking for. Um, Ironically enough, there was one professor who I found to be very motherly, but she was not part of my women's studies uh, professor's classes. She was actually a creative writing professor, which was my favorite class the whole time I was there. And she just innately had something and innately was able to give off this, this motherly womanhood that did inspire the kind of, you know, uh, satisfaction that, young girls might be looking for to find themselves in, or to see and to find something that they are able to seek after, in a specific way. And so, yeah.
Can you articulate what kind of effect modern feminism has on young women, and maybe positive as well as negative?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm quite detached from that world and have been for 10 years now. And so it would be amiss for me to allude that I am able to make that kind of connection, because I don't even know what is going on currently, and what I knew from the past has kind of faded. But small things that I can recall is positively, there was uh, it, it, it's always helpful to be able to articulate and define whatever negative feeling someone is feeling, or a negative experience that they're having, or a, a, a sense of injustice that they're kind of that's being kind of imprinted on their lives somehow. That articulation is key to kind of starting a path to some kind of, because I think that in those questions, what's actually happening is that young women are very much so trying to find themselves and trying to find fulfillment in their lives. And I think both women and young men both do this, but young women are having to grapple with and define certain things as they perceive them from like their experiences and their senses and all of that. And so that articulation is key, not just for their own like psyche, but for prayer, right? Like being able to articulate what needs you have, or what feelings you have, or what experiences have been, how experiences have impacted you, is key in the dialogue that we need every day with our heavenly bridegroom. And so that would be definitely a positive thing. But of course, all the negative things, it's the same issue as with anything else that is purely secular, which is that it solely depends on this human wisdom, which simply does not deliver.
Yeah.